All right, hi, this is Megan and Allison, and then our project is Metacognitive Behavior Tracking. This is our end of the quarter video. And I think starting from sprint zero, from where we left off last quarter, we still didn't really have a completed prototype to test our system arguments, so we focused a lot on trying to complete our prototype. And we started out by outlining what our goals for the quarter was by filling out this spreadsheet called the project direction, which we're going to show you. And this basically outlines what our conceptual contributions are, what the human problem is, some obstacles, characteristics, and arguments, and the evidence that we've had. And then working on this actually really helped us figure out how metacognitive behavior tracking relates to our design arguments of increased awareness, reflection, and planning to help students better understand what the metacognitive cycle is and for them to get better at doing each of these little sections.
So for sprint 2, we really wanted to test, sprint 1, we really wanted to test our system arguments. So we spent a lot of time refining our tech and getting our prototype to a point where we could test the arguments that we wanted to. The new features that we added to our Chrome extension was a summary page. So once you finish a study session, it shows you a timeline of what you did during that session, both your online activity and your offline activity. And then you could also users can also interact with the summary page by checking off all the websites that they considered a distraction. And by checking it off, it would turn red and add to kind of a timer of how long you spent distracted out of your total time. So that was really helpful so that the users could actively engage with our interface, and it allowed us to test our argument that measuring awareness would be if the user could pinpoint where they got distracted during learning. Oops, here we go.
Okay, so here we have a demo of the technology that we built in this screen right now. If a user's computer is inactive for more than 2 minutes, then this screen here will show up and it's going to ask them what they were doing. So for example, you could be going to the bathroom, going on your phone, social media, and for this particular reason, we were recording our end of the quarter sprint video. So we can write that down and hit submit. And then after our learning session is over, we can go here and then we can click end session. Here you can see there's a time of everything that we have done. There's offline activities as well as online activities. So I'm going to go ahead and hit end session. And it's going to take us to the summary page. And then here I can see what my distractions are. And I can also check them. So for example, I was on Facebook Messenger, which I know is a distraction. So I'm going to check all of these. And I was on my phone for a bit. And then I also was on NBO, Norris Box Office, trying to find tickets for senior week. So these are all distractions. And you can see my offline activity is also recorded. Like I was going on my phone and I was talking to Megan. And up here we can see that out of my 46-minute study session, I was distracted for 27 minutes. Yikes, that's about half the time that I was trying to work, I was actually not working. And then this is basically just how our tech works. And then we were actually able to test this in our next sprint, which Megan will now talk about.
So in real sprint 2, once our technology was in a really good testable state, we ran user study. So this sprint we came up with the user study and ran it with 5 users. And the design argument that we were testing was the awareness part. So we wanted to figure out if showing students their data about their learning behaviors during a learning session actually made them more aware of their learning behaviors. So we had them download our Chrome extension and study with it for an hour. And then afterwards, once they saw the summary, we asked them to tell us if they could pinpoint the areas where they got distracted, just like Allison did just now. And we found out that users did become more aware of their learning processes after seeing their data. So compared to before, when they weren't able to directly say when they were distracted or couldn't tell you what they were doing before and after, they were able to do that. We had one user who said that she knew she went on social media pretty often, but she didn't know that it was that much, and she was pretty shocked by the results that she saw. Another student said that he didn't get distracted because he blocked social media sites, and that was a strategy that he wanted to continue for next time, and he was really satisfied with the summary that he saw when he was done using the extension. So we're really excited to be able to prove the awareness part of our design arguments.
So after proving the awareness part of our design arguments, our next step is basically where do we go from here? So the first half of the sprint was dedicated to preparing and executing our status update. So the first of all, we wanted to focus on planning. Now that we have design arguments for awareness and we have design arguments for reflection, now we want to focus on the third aspect of this project, which is to be able to plan effectively for future study sessions. So our activity during the status update was asking other DTH students about their learning strategies that they use, when they use them, and how effective those are. And then this was followed by a really interesting discussion about how to intervene for learning behavior. So we could potentially have this bank of study strategies to suggest to future students who might potentially want them. Our second part of our status update was wanting to plan a bigger study from the results from our first user study, but the results from the status update actually showed us that we aren't really ready to perform another user study because our arguments for a reflection piece weren't strong enough since there really wasn't a way to measure them. And then we really needed to refocus our outcomes and establish a clear way of measuring what those outcomes are. And at this point, we felt really stuck because we realized that the goal of the project was not actually to change students' behavior. So we wanted to move away from the planning aspect of it, but rather for them to develop metacognitive skills through reflection. So we want to bring the focus back onto how can we help students better reflect. But we don't know how to measure reflection. We didn't really have any ways of coming up with concrete measures that are proven. So for a bit, we didn't do anything. We were kind of stuck, and there wasn't really a drive to figure out what was wrong. So that was kind of more of a setback in during this quarter. And then next sprint, we fixed it a
So
bit.
in sprint 4, we spent a lot of time refocusing our goals and mapping out how we wanted to finish out the quarter. And this really helped us get out of our slump and actively look for ways to get help. So we talked to Victoria and Jamie, who helped us learn about qualitative coding as a way to measure reflection. And we developed a rubric for this reflection, which Alice is going to talk about.
So through the different papers that we've read, we came up with a couple of measures for reflection. So being able to clearly think about learning processes, being able to identify strengths and weaknesses, and concrete ways to address those weaknesses, being able to explain what they did well, what they did not, um, being able to identify what was difficult for them and to motivate themselves to learn about different materials. So we came up with this rubric based on these different criteria.
And the criteria are based on basically what an ideal reflection would look like. What does a good reflection look like? And that would be our 4 on the rubric. And from there, we kind of scaled down and tried to figure out milestones up to creating a good reflection. So we had some pre-session questions that we asked the user before each session, and then post-session questions. And we asked these questions before and after each session that we had with the user. The first session was done without the Chrome extension, and the second session was done with the Chrome extension.
Right, and this is a plan for a study that we wanted to, another mini study that we wanted to run.
So we use the rubric to help as part of our study design for a study that we ran in Sprint 5. So for Sprint 5, we ran the mini study. We ran it on 4 users, and each user had 2 sessions, like I mentioned before, one session with the Chrome extension, without the Chrome extension, and then the following session with the Chrome extension. And we asked a series of questions that you saw with the rubric, where we targeted awareness and reflection. And then all these responses were analyzed using the rubric that we developed. And we were able to assess the difference between sessions for each participant. And what we were trying to do was establish the links between having data, how that relates to awareness, and how awareness relates to reflection, and see how those 3 kind of criteria linked. And we found that the reflections became a lot more specific after seeing their data. So not only were users more aware after seeing their data, which we were able to test, but they were also able to reflect better because they were able to talk about their experiences in more concrete terms. And a lot of the responses went from being kind of vague and unclear to being more specific and particular about what they were doing and what they were going to change. And it was really, really cool.
Yeah, and lastly, just some takeaways from DTR because we're both graduating seniors. DTR really helped us learn how to be more self-directed learners. So this project was actually so meta, and by figuring out and like trying to like go and learn what other students are struggling with in terms of metacognitive like learning, we were really able to like reflect that on ourselves and kind of just like see where we're struggling too, which is really cool to see.
We also learned to plan our own tasks through sprint planning and direct our own project, which was something neither of us had ever done before. So it was a really unique experience.
And we learned that research is honestly really hard. There's always gonna be times where you think that you don't really know like what you're doing, and there's like just lots of ups and downs, and it's a lot of like really deep thinking about like what your arguments are, what your research questions are, how does your arguments differ from your research arguments. But ultimately, in the end, it's very rewarding.
And these are all skills that we want to take with us as we go into real life next year. We appreciate all the support that we've received and are honored to have had the opportunity to be part of DTR and this amazing community.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.